Texas saw its highest Democratic turnout for primaries in nearly 25 years Tuesday, but Democratic voters were still easily outnumbered in the Republican stronghold. The Lone Star State has been called by some the nation's bellwether for these midterms. But what did we really learn from these Texas primaries Tuesday night? CBSN political contributor and Boston Herald columnist Michael Graham has been following the vote. He made it into the studio despite the snow, which we're thankful for.
I did.
Okay, a lot of Democrats got excited when they saw these big turnout numbers Tuesday night. What did you make of them?
Well, they were good turnout numbers compared to 2014, where Democrats only made up 29% of the electorate in the primaries, and 2010 when they were about 32%. So yeah, getting up to 40% is a big improvement, but it's still 40%. So you went from a D student to a C student. This is a problem, and that's why I think that this was always oversold, that Texas was going to be a bellwether, or that you were going to see a blue wave for Texas. The real question is there enthusiasm? And I think there's good news for both parties. Democrats can feel good that they did break the million vote number, that they're back to the numbers that they last saw in 2002. They can feel good about the fact that their challenger for Ted Cruz, Beto O'Rourke, has been outraising an incumbent senator, which is pretty amazing on fundraising stuff. I used to run campaigns, and that's really tough to do. But at the same time, Republicans had a question. Are we going to see our numbers sag because of just apathy that tends to happen in off-year elections, or because of the Trump factor, that people are so upset by Trump's, shall we say, shenanigans, that they decide, I don't want to be a Republican, don't want to identify as Republican, and I won't show up? Well, that didn't happen either. Republicans set a turnout record as well. Both those records related, obviously, to the growth in the population, but still good news for Republicans, too.
Well, to your point of Democrats going to a state where all they can do is go from being a D student to a C student, Mississippi.
Right.
There's going to be a Senate election there as well, because Thad Cochran says he's going to resign. Is Mississippi a bridge too far for Democrats?
Yeah, it really is. I grew up in South Carolina, a state that used to have all Democrats. When I was a little kid, everyone was an elected Democrat. Then it switched, and now, if you notice, not a lot of Democrats in South Carolina. Mississippi, only more so. And I was looking at some analysis that was done for the voter behavior, and man, Mississippi is really solidly, culturally, turnout-related Republican. It's an older state. It's a whiter, the electorate tends to be whiter. It's really strong ground. And the argument that, well, if you're going to have two races, you may not have enough high-quality Republicans to go around. And so, what's the next step going to be? Once again, you run into the problem that it takes Democrats, you got to get 50 plus 1. You got to win the election. There just aren't that many Democratic votes to work with. And so if you've got a tolerable Republican for each of those seats, it's very unlikely the Democrats are going to make any progress there.
So let's turn to a state where Democrats are at least B students. Pennsylvania, they have this special election coming up next week. And the president is going to campaign for the Republican candidate. It looks like a tight race. How will this race be helpful in understanding the national mood? And what risk does the president run, again, tying himself to a candidate that might lose?
No, it's a great point. Back to Texas just for a second. There are 3 districts in Texas that have Republican congressmen, but that went for Hillary in 2016, and those seats could be pickups. This seat in Pennsylvania, in western Pennsylvania, is far more interesting because it went for Trump by 20 points, and yet the last polls from the last 72 hours show the race is neck and neck. I heard from a Republican consultant who said to me off the record, at this point, I'd be surprised if the Republican won because of the dynamics in that race. And the Republican Party has responded by pouring in money, about $9 million they've sent into that district, which is interesting because thanks to redistricting in Pennsylvania, they just redrew the seats, had a big lawsuit about it. That district isn't even going to exist in 9 months. So what does that tell you?
Yeah.
That tells you that Republicans are worried about November, and they desperately need to not lose a high-profile pro-Trump seat. They do not want to get Democrats even more energized for November.
Well, some people were even suggesting that perhaps the timing of the president's steel tariffs could be tied to this race, or at least more broadly to the idea of midterms and trying to let his base know that he's still the same candidate they voted for in 2016. Well, is that how you read this, or what do you make of the politics of that?
I would be shocked that a president would make a public policy decision based on pure politics. Please don't break my heart. I just couldn't imagine that. Of course, there's politics here. The question, though, is the way that Western Pennsylvania works. You know, Pittsburgh has turned itself from a steel town into a medical, tech, intellectual property town. You wonder how much heft it has. I do think that there's an emotional appeal to a certain group of voters. They're older, and it's not that they work in steel. It's not that they even know anyone who works in steel, but because of the kind of, you know, the iconography. You know, remember Billy Joel saying we're living here in Allentown. It was, you know, he didn't say we're living here in Albuquerque. You know, we have this kind of emotional notion that there's just something right about those guys showing up at the steel mill, and Trump is tapping into that. Economically, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Okay. Michael Graham in Boston, thanks so much.
Happy to be here.